Okay,
Oh,
and we're
man.
live. And everyone, I have a stinking cold, so I apologize in advance, but I'm thrilled that fortuitously I organized way in advance to speak to Joel Rubin today. Not knowing that in the meanwhile, we were going to go into Venezuela and capture
No,
um,
you knew this. You predicted this ahead of
Maduro.
time.
Yeah. And even more fortuitously, Joel has written a really great Substack
Thanks.
just today, which I encourage everyone to look, entitled Maduro Arrested. Now comes the hard part. And you start off, Joel. I didn't know. I knew that you'd got diplomatic experience, national security, with the Middle East, but you have worked, in fact, in Latin America, right?
I did. Yes. Thanks, Vicky. Appreciate that. Yeah, I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Costa Rica in the mid 90s. So that kind of that was my foundational experience in international work. Wonderful experience. And
Well,
definitely gives me a feel for for things with a layering of empathy for what the region is going through right now.
so what was your immediate reaction when you woke up on Saturday, or if that's what happened to you? So what happened to me? I woke up and I was like, I sort of thought I was misreading the headlines at the outset. What was your immediate reaction when you saw, before we even got to the press conference, that we've got
Oh
Maduro?
God. Yeah. Now, there's been several frames that I've been trying to use to make sense of this when thinking about it and talking to folks. But you and I have both, we've been watching this happening now for several months, right? Like this sort of slow
Yeah,
move of the Armada into Venezuela, and the sense that is this going to be a regime change and whatnot. But there's some real drivers behind this. And so when we went in and took out Maduro, it was like everything came together at once. And the one that dominates my view of this is that we are now acting like a global imperialist hegemon, a regional hegemon for certain. And that was described in the national security strategy. And it was just so powerful a moment to think that we could send in our military and just go and pluck out a leader and send him
yeah,
to New York, and then basically say, now the resources in this country are ours. And it was stunning. And it's so hard to understand that, accept that this is now a new moment in American foreign policy, that we are no longer abiding by the rules of the road that we learned after World War II and that we've benefited from. We are now going back to the 19th century, spheres of influence, regional hegemony, power through force, and not through diplomacy and economic means. And it was stunning. And so then to see the president, to your question, follow that up with the presser essentially validating all that, quickly pivoting away from the narco-terrorism argument and going straight into the
yeah.
oil, really, really brought it home that we are in a new moment.
Well, you um brilliantly divided up your piece, your thoughts for what needs to happen after this, for any sort of stability into I think 5 different buckets. So shall we take them in order? The first one you talked about was oil. So talk a bit about that. What's there, and how we've got to approach this in your view.
Yeah, I mean, the core principle is that the oil in Venezuela is Venezuelans. It belongs to the Venezuelan people. It's theirs. And anything that is done related to the oil and the extraction, meaning if our companies go in and try to rebuild the infrastructure, which would likely, if this is not a stable country, and I lay this out later on in the piece, if there's no stability, it's going to require American military assets to
Right.
essentially protect American corporations to go and extract the oil. By the way, this oil's been off market for years, or degrading for a number of years. It's probably at about a fifth of its potential. Largest oil fields in the world is the common refrain, but it's really low grade crude. We also have a glut of oil on the global market. So who's to say what the economic drivers are? But at its core, the point of oil revenues and the oil is that it should be in the hands of the Venezuelan people. It's not ours for the taking, and that this is a key tension point that it's going to be across all of the days ahead. And this is the point of the piece. The easiest part may have already happened. We saw, and I hate to do the analogy of the Middle East, and it's so funny, right? Like we were going to talk about Netanyahu and Israel when we are coming up with a date for the live, and now it's Venezuela. But so much of the commentary, if I may say, so much of the commentary seems to be, oh, well, in the Middle East, it was this way, or in Iraq, it was that way. Therefore, it must be like this in Latin America. I'm really cautious about saying that, probably because of having lived in Latin America. And in many ways, I always view the Iraq War as a sort of Latin America type policy by the United States, a colonialist policy. Like we were doing in the Middle East what we've been doing in Latin America for 2 centuries. And so now we're going backwards again. And the one tidbit I'll say from Iraq is the mission accomplished moment, 5, 6 weeks after shock and awe, Bush gets out there and says, "We're done." And of course, we were there for 15 more years with heavy military
Yeah.
equipment. So this is the sugar high moment. And so my point is, if oil is the central node, the only way to ensure that we get it right in Venezuela in the post Maduro moment is if we get the the commitment from the president that this oil is for the Venezuelan people. That will give us legitimacy. That will give us the ability to work with the Venezuelans and with the opposition and others to transition this to a calm environment that could then partner with America and partner with the United States and with our companies. But oil is clearly the primary driver for why we did this invasion.
Do you think you heard that messaging in that press conference at Mar-a-Lago?
No, and you know what's really funny? I said to a colleague, "Hey, if Marco Rubio were running this, we'd be fine, or at least better off." He's trying to message this way. He's a Latino. He understands the dynamics of the region. We can't go into the Bolivarian northern part of South America and just take their resources. Yankee go home. The whole resentment towards the United States of 100, 200 years, the dirty wars, the multiple juntas, multiple right wing militia leaders that we empowered, the human rights violations across the region. We've just been getting out of that whole dirty vibe. And so I think that the president, I don't think the president knows these details. He talked about grabbing the oil from Iraq or grab it from Syria. Let's grab it from here. Let's use it for that. But if it's going to be done right, Rubio and all those who are charged with executing are going to have to make sure that this is oil that empowers a better Venezuela. It's not a better America, it's a better Venezuela. That will enable us to have better security in that part of the world.
Well, tying into that is, I think, your next one is drug trafficking. I mean, it's all part of the same thing. Your next bucket, right?
That's right. Well, and the drug trafficking and the regional stability.
So wait, yeah. So I was like, we were still
Yeah.
on point one. So now we're So two is regional stability.
Yeah.
Wait, okay. So talk us through that.
This is something that's very concerning to me right now, about how we're approaching this. And, so much of what follows on is actually based upon the initial days. When I served at the State Department and when you work in foreign affairs, basically the structures of execution of a policy are decided pretty early on. And then that's how the bureaucracy follows through. It doesn't readjust and re-examine and whatnot. And in the piece, I'll get back to the regional stability, but I try to argue here that Congress in particular at this moment has a crucial role to play in setting up some guardrails, setting up some goals, setting up some benchmarks for how we should be executing an effective policy now post Maduro. And I already take it as a fact that Maduro is gone, but the regime, of course, is still there. I'm not going to get into the argument about let's return Maduro home, or even whether or not it was wise. I don't think it was wise. Let's just put it that way. But that's not where we are. And my hope is that Congress in particular puts out guardrails and a vision for a policy that will make this turn out decently, right? Decently at best. And so regional stability is the one that keeps me up at night. It's actually one I lost some sleep over the other night, because we're not engaging and pulling in the region. We're not doing like what in Ukraine, there's been such benefit from having European allies, and even in the Middle East and Gaza, to do the analogies, the Arab world being partners, or trying to get them to be partners for a Gaza rebuild, the Abraham Accords. Where's our regional strategy? Right? Like, where are
Right.
regional partners? We need to have support from the region right now, because the less support we have, the more we're on our own, and then the destabilization of this and the potential internally for a fracturing of Venezuela politics and Venezuela itself physically is high. Once you take out the kingpin, in many ways, just like many dictators around the world, this guy held different factions together. Well, now there is
Yes.
politics in Caracas. They're not all of the same mind. So now that could become very destabilizing. That could paradoxically hurt the oil markets. It could cause more refugee flows. It could expand drug trafficking, all the things that Trump says he wants to oppose. So we got to make sure that the region doesn't spiral out of
So when
control. And that
you
means
say,
working together. Mhm.
and when you talk about congressional guardrails, give me an example of the kind of thing you're thinking that would create regional stability.
Yeah. First of all, there should be clear from Congress, from the foreign affairs committees, and from the leadership statements about expectations for what a policy should include. And that means it should be demanding a diplomatic strategy. There should be legislation put forward in appropriations bills. There's a deadline in a few weeks. We're probably going to come to another shutdown watch
Yeah.
of the omnibus, stick in their language that requires a plan, a report and a plan for transition to democracy, regional stability and engagement, counter narcotics, the dissemination of resources, these kinds of hard nuts and bolts issues that I laid out in the piece. Put those into legislation and then
Got it.
demand hearings on those, and call into account Rubio and his team, and the DOD, the Hegseth folks, to answer those hard questions. Because right now they're kind of running free. And this is the thing that really is frightening, right? And we
Right.
saw Stephen Miller the other night. He just, on an interview with Jake Tapper, he's just going off and screaming, we can, blow up anyone we want anywhere. No, you can't. No, you can't. But if Congress doesn't set up guardrails or benchmarks, he kind of can. So there needs to be real
Yeah.
framing by Congress. And I worry about that. They're going to get into a war powers resolution vote, which is fine and dandy. It's probably not going to pass, but that's not the goal here. It's not whether or not you should go to war. It's what you should do now that we've taken out the leader of Venezuela.
Are you hopeful that Congress will do this? All right. Maybe on that note, maybe on that note, we'll move on.
That's
I'll
the
move
viral
on.
moment. I'm sorry.
Okay. The well, I had to
for,
ask.
for
I had
for
to
your
ask.
audience, I just got to tell them, for the audience, I was a Senate staffer, and I also was the legislative affairs liaison to the House for Secretary Kerry in the Obama administration. So I've worked a lot with Congress, and you see my reaction. And that's a loss. I got to tell you, Vicky, one other thing that really pains me about this is, of course, they made it partisan, Trump and his team. But like, for many years, Venezuela was not a really partisan issue. There was bipartisan disgust
Right.
at Chavez and at Maduro. President Biden put a bounty on Maduro's head and didn't recognize the election in 2024. So there is muscle memory of
Yep.
bipartisanship on this issue, and it needs to be accessed.
100%. So bucket number
Uh,
3, drug
yeah,
drug trafficking. And I thought what you said here was very
yes.
interesting, actually. Um, I mean, explain to people who may not have read your piece. but we can't. I mean, it's very interesting. Again, this has got to sort of come from within, is what you're saying.
We're talking about a country, 25 million people next to Colombia, tons of drugs flowing all around the region. Even with our armada of 15,000 troops, we can't stop every flow of drugs. We need partner countries. And this is from working in Latin America, where in Costa Rica, there was a good government, a strong government. And that meant they had local law enforcement. That meant they partnered with the United States and others around the region to interdict. This is not a purely American problem, and we can't militarily or physically stop it everywhere on our own, unilaterally in every country. It's not possible. What we need is Venezuela to be a partner in this. So we need, as part of the benchmarks, for a new government to come into Venezuela that has the support of the people, that does interdict drugs, that does work with us on preventing the flow, as well as on providing economic opportunities for producers. One of the most impactful visits I had, I went on a congressional delegation about a decade ago with Foreign Affairs Committee, House Foreign Affairs Committee members. We went to Colombia and Mexico and Peru. And in Colombia, we went into the jungle and we saw cocaine basically being harvested, coca being harvested. And we saw the little labs in the jungles that were being disrupted and destroyed by our Colombian partners, who are supported by our taxpayer dollars.
Right.
Unfortunately, that was being executed by USAID, which no longer exists,
Okay.
in partnership with our law enforcement. And this also goes to a broader picture of this sort of grand vision of America in the world, but we've undermined many of the tools we need to execute that, in particular in Latin America. But all that said, if you don't put out a vision from Congress and put a milestone that we have to have counter narcotics embedded in any future relationship with Venezuela, we're not going to get counter narcotics, and we're not going to be able to stop it on our own militarily. We must work with a partner government that wants to do this. And that could be part of the package as we go forward in trying to get into phases of stability in Venezuela. I don't think it's a bullshit issue, excuse my French. I did think it was a BS excuse for going after Maduro, and I think we've seen that, but it still really is a way to avoid the corruption that narco trafficking and drugs has, that effect that it has as well on governance in that part of the world.
Well, which brings us neatly into your next bucket, which is the issue of democracy and governance, and I'm scratching my head reading all the headlines at the moment about, Trump saying, well, we're working together with Delcy Rodriguez, who's just been sworn in as acting president, and Delcy Rodriguez saying the exact opposite. It's a head scratcher. And I guess protests in the street, right, in support of Maduro, people being arrested if they appear to be happy that Maduro's gone. I mean,
It literally is the most ridiculous self-inflicted wound of this whole moment, of this whole policy, right? Like, I'm not saying airdrop in Machado, Maria Corina Machado, to run the country like we did Ahmed Chalabi, to use another Middle East analogy, right? But Venezuela has a muscle memory of democracy. Maduro's predecessor, Hugo Chavez, the one who sent us all in this direction, was elected to office and then, of course, destroyed Venezuelan democracy. But they did have the semblance of it. And they also have a judicial system. They have a legislative body. And then they had an election in 2024 where the Machado candidate won overwhelmingly. So there's a huge reservoir of opportunity. And if you transition to democracy, you're strengthening your policy. You're not weakening it. This national security strategy, unfortunately, though, I bet you probably couldn't control F the word democracy in it, right? Like, there's literally no interest in democracy promotion in the national security strategy, which is a complete undermining of our ability to project our power and get relationships with countries who will be behind us and alongside us, these democratic countries. It should not be a war for democracy, but democracy should be seen as a tool to strengthen the policy. And so it's all the ingredients are there. And so by deferring to Delcy, deferring to the sitting vice president, now acting president, we're essentially saying to her, hey, just like to Hamas in Gaza, to another Middle East. I can't stop it. But, you know, we're going to cut a deal or allow you to be. So now they go and they wipe out the opposition. So what we're seeing instead is more aggressive moves against political opponents now in Venezuela, a wipeout of our natural allies potentially. And so that guardrail needs to be put out. The administration must be held to account. It cannot be executing a policy that empowers the worst instincts of the remnants of the regime. And it should be a policy that moves to transition to support the people of Venezuela, the people who need a better future. The Venezuelans in the United States, they want that too. That's what they're advocating for. I think they're blown away by the idea that Delcy suddenly gets the thumbs up from the United States. So, democracy is a tool of stability and partnership for the United States. It's not just
Well,
some crazy idealistic idea.
well, one has to believe, if one is gives him the benefit of the doubt, that Marco Rubio, given his background, that is what he wants.
Completely.
And so I guess the question is then, you know, one has to hope that there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that we're not privy to.
Yeah, and you know what I hope they do is lift it up a notch. Go to the UN, start advocating for our allies to get on board with this policy, work with our regional partners, talk about democracy inside, clean this up, right? That's what I would say, clean it up. And so if Rubio, who understands the value of democracy, you know, he doesn't like Cuba. He didn't like Maduro for many reasons, but their corrupt autocratic behavior is a core component. I don't think he's interested in replacing one level of corrupt autocrat with another
No.
just to get the oil. And it's not sustainable. To point one, we can't get the oil if the country's run by an autocrat where there's inherent instability and businesses don't want to go in and our military is going to be sucked into this. It's not going to work. We need to create a stable Venezuela that has legitimacy in the eyes of its people to be able to achieve any of our goals. So this is a foundational point that we can't miss.
Well, of course, they did do an oil deal, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
Chevron. Mm-hmm.
yes, but yeah. So what was that? Was that yesterday? I mean, there's just been some announcement, right?
Well,
That
maybe from Chevron, but also they've been giving Chevron waivers for years. But I'm sorry, maybe you're referring to something different.
no, I think something happened earlier today where so that's why I mean I feel like there has been a lot. There's been some back channels here that I'm
May I?
hopeful.
That's what's
What?
been so interesting about this, right? Is that there were back channels for months. Rick Grinnell was
Yeah.
going down there, another advisor to the president, the head of the Kennedy Center, and he actually sprung some Americans from captivity and was negotiating with Maduro. And there was a battle inside the administration with Grinnell and Rubio. Now Rubio seems to have won the argument, but that doesn't mean that they don't have contacts inside this government.
Oh, absolutely. And then and what do you make then of the news of today about the tankers, Venezuelan tankers, members of the Shadow Fleet, one with a Russian flag on it that has been, again, we've gone in with our military might and taken it over. What do you
Well,
make of that? I mean, the fact that it's got a Russian flag on it, what does that mean?
so let's pull all these strings together, right, and tie it in a nice bow here, right? With and also it's like the fifth point of the piece, which is this global competition: Russia, China, and Iran,
Oh,
countries
yes.
that have been. Yeah, but
Yes.
no, but I mean, it's really pertinent to the tactical moment as well as the big strategy game, right? And it's so interesting, right? But like Russia and China are watching, Iran is watching, Venezuela is a client state of theirs. Uh, Maduro must be wondering what he got for all that investment or whatnot, that partnership. He didn't get much. But these countries, this links into democracy as well, right? Like if we want to peel these countries off of Latin America, and there is a big problem of China up and down Latin America. This is not like some Trump PR thing. This is real. China has been investing across Latin America for a number of decades, and maneuvering in ways that can harm the local governments as well. We have a real problem there, but we can't peel them off if we basically scare every single government in every country in the region that we're just going to invade them and not make their life better. That will empower Russia and China. So I think going after the tankers, that's aggressive. It may send a message to Russia to a certain extent, but it also sends a message back to this Venezuelan government that there is a bit of a quarantine, that there is a pressure loop on them.
Right.
So use that pressure. That's what my argument would be. Use that pressure to get to these end state goals, get to this democratic development, the counter narcotics mission, the proper distribution of the oil wealth, all of these things, the legitimacy in the region, all of these have to come together. But we do need to look at the regional and the global game as undergirding all of this. Everyone's watching this right now. So how we manage this will impact whether or not we have any influence in Latin America going forward. So I'm not like a cheerleader for blocking the Russian tanker, but if it fits into a strategy of
Right.
pressure on this current regime in Caracas towards the goals that we're talking about, then I can live with it. But it is pretty provocative.
And interestingly, I mean, we've heard not with there hasn't been much said by Russia and China, right,
Hmm.
on all of this.
The UN, the UN is sort of, I mean, look, I got to tell you, the global reaction has been very mixed. Let me step back, right? Like, if Stephen Miller hadn't lost his mind about Greenland the other day on TV and said we're basically going to invade, and if the White House had kept quiet on that, they could have seen a real sort of flexible and open global political environment for what they just did in Venezuela. A lot of the reactions were muted, if not supportive in Europe, concern. But the Greenland argument has now sort of distorted the view of Venezuela that the United States is now going to go and invade every country, which is
Yeah.
deeply problematic. And so if you're Russia and China, that's winning. Say nothing, right? Like this is great. Trump is going to attack Greenland and basically undermine NATO. Why would the Russians and Chinese say anything? This is what they want. This is their
Yeah.
objective. So I think for Rubio to right size this, and it seems like he's trying to get the focus back on Venezuela and off of Greenland. We're going to offer money for it and whatnot, is what he's saying. Push it back to the UN. Put a plan forward that meets benchmarks. Get the Congress engaged on a bipartisan basis. There is opportunity and time to straighten this out. Maduro is not going back. And I hope that the administration, I hope that Congress in particular, doesn't just scream and walk away and say, impeach him and we're done, but actually sets a policy goal forward like they were talking about for a number of years on Venezuela.
Very, very interesting. Well, so while I've got you, can we now go back to the Middle East? Can we talk about where we are around the
Always.
world? Well, I've got you. Um, well, I've got you.
Please.
I
Yeah.
mean, your thoughts on, well, do you have any thoughts on China and Taiwan?
It's the high risk of this move is that in essentially, and if you take, okay, when I do debates with Republicans on TV and elsewhere, they say take Trump at his word. I'm going to take him at his word. I'm not going to do this. He doesn't mean what he say. This is not Trump 1.0, where yeah, he's just creative in his language. No, they keep on telling us believe him. Okay, I'm going to believe him. And if I'm going to believe him, that national security strategy basically says China, you've got Asia, Russia, you've got Europe, and we've got the Western Hemisphere. And so Taiwan, you are next. And if anything, this invasion of Venezuela should make everybody in Taipei extremely nervous that we will not come to their defense. And if anything, we are executing a policy that makes the Russians envious.
Right.
How's that sound for
Right.
darkness?
No, yeah, no, no. Well,
No,
it
but
is, it,
I really worry about that. I think that that's why I'm advocating so strongly that we straighten this out and that we get a win in Venezuela, that the Venezuelan people are there, that we're not seen as stealing the resources, that we have democratic support inside the country, that we show the countries around the world that it may be clumsy and ugly, and I can be partisan all I want, but from a policy perspective, I want the United States to do well, and I want countries around the world to do well, and they're not going to do well if China's going to take them over or if Russia's going to take them over because they're afraid of what the United States will do to them.
well, so exactly. So what do you think, if anything, this means for the Russia-Ukraine situation?
I mean, look, you know, it came up in the presser the other day with Wickoff and Kushner after the British and the French made this extraordinary commitment to military supply and on boots on the ground inside Ukraine as a security guarantee for the Ukrainians. So it's all like going great there. And then all of a sudden the question is, well, you know, is President Trump going to invade Greenland, and you know, how can they count on his word in Ukraine? Interestingly, um, I think with Ukraine, and also another interesting tidbit people probably caught, but Zelensky, uh, when asked about this, taking Maduro, his response was, well, you know, they should go and get Putin. I don't think he realizes that in this analog, he's the guy that would be taken by Russia rather than us going and taking Putin. Um, I just I feel like the Greenland thing has really blown up a lot of the diplomacy around the world in a very, you know, Stephen Miller again. I'll name him. He has really done his administration a disservice. He has done Trump's policy towards Venezuela and Ukraine a disservice by jumping in really hard on Greenland because it brings up the worst fears around the world rather than helping Trump to succeed in these two arenas. So I think the Europeans have had a pretty good investment now. But I just don't trust Putin to actually agree to any of this, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
he's just going to keep on legging it out. Like like Ukraine keeps on getting a better deal and is agreeable, but until Trump puts pressure on Russia, puts more sanctions on, basically says he is the problem, we're not going to see Putin stop this invasion. And that you know, I think is that's the unfortunate dynamic there.
Yeah. Which Mikhail Zygar, who I often chat with, I mean, that's very much his view. Putin has no interest in ending this war. He
No
needs the war.
interest.
He needs the war for his domestic stability. The Middle East,
Yeah.
because actually, I mean, I did wonder when I was sort of playing it all back in my head. I mean, Bibi Netanyahu was at Mar-a-Lago for New Year's Eve, um, and you know, one wonders if how much, you know, if anything, Trump shared with him about what was going down. I mean, you never know. I mean, Trump likes to talk, but
Well, you know,
um,
Delsey blamed the Jews for the invasion.
well, I mean, that was extraordinary. Yes.
Oh God, help us. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm laughing
Yeah.
because I'm so uncomfortable. I'm getting tired of it. Like we Jews, my people are blamed for everything these days, and we're like a tiny smidgen.
That was extraordinary. Yes.
Extraordinary. You know, Bibi was there ostensibly to push and put more pressure, you know, on to support either Israel or the United States and Israel bombing Iran. That's the primary goal. He did actually get something out of Trump on that, where Trump basically said Iran can't have can't reconstitute its long range ballistic missile program, which I think is a give to Netanyahu because that means that he can basically feel comfortable attacking, striking again. That's not a real policy, of course. You know, a real policy would be the United States leaning in to try to get a nuclear deal, lock in Iran, stop it from advancing. But what's happening in Iran, I have to say, Vicky, you know, this is
Yeah.
extraordinary. There's a lot going on the ground, a lot of protests,
I know.
uh, shops shut down, water scarcity. So there's a lot of dynamics on the ground in Iran. So that was Bibi's primary goal. He didn't want to talk about the West Bank, which the West Bank is a
Yeah.
mess, and the Israelis are really, and the settlers in particular, are really causing a lot of pain and suffering inside the West Bank. And I think the administration tried to push him there as well. But it was in many ways a touching gloves because Netanyahu has an election coming up this calendar year now, and he will not do anything to upset Donald Trump, even if Trump asked him to do things like on the West Bank that if Biden had done it, you would have seen Netanyahu screaming bloody murder.
Yeah,
But he won't criticize Trump at all because Trump is so popular in Israel.
100%. Um, and
So
what do
Trump
you
has
make?
power there on that
Yes, I know.
relationship.
No, I'm aware. I'm aware. And what do you make of what is going on in Iran? I mean, is this it? Is this the tipping point?
We've had so Iran democracy folks have said this is it several times, right, over the past decade. But that doesn't mean they're wrong per se. But they think we're close. You hear it in a different tone now when you talk to people who are tapped into Iran on the ground. The old man is very, very old. The regime really took body blows last calendar year with its loss of its ally in Assad in Syria, losing that transit route to Hezbollah, the attacks on Hezbollah, the nuclear program. They're hit really hard, so they're weak. It's hard to count them out because it's such a thick, dense regime. But the people of Iran are protesting in ways that we haven't seen, largely because their life is so difficult and rough right now. The economic situation, the physical, the water, as I mentioned. So this is a real moment. We're seeing a rise in repression as well as a result. I think the Netta protests a few years ago were very powerful. We saw it after Ahmadinejad's election in '09. We saw it in 2019. We've seen periods and episodes, but this supreme leader is extremely old, and this president is a little more. He's more mild than the previous president from during 22. So who knows? And that may be very well where the Israelis are going, and where Netanyahu, when he met with Trump, may very well be trying to make the argument that you can knock them out with a couple of blows. I wouldn't be at all as surprised if we see in 2026 an attempt to make by Israel to make a military strike into Iran to try to decapitate the regime. I would not at all be surprised by that.
Wow. Well, what a year we have ahead of us.
Yeah,
What a year.
it's
Have I left out a region that, I mean, that you would like to opine on?
well, I appreciate this. It's so fascinating what's happening around the world right now, isn't it? It's post-pandemic. It's Donald Trump's presidency. It's this never-ending war in Ukraine, the ongoing crises roiling the Middle East. I never thought Latin America wasn't on my bingo card that Latin America would blow up in the way that it is right now. But I think, quite frankly, we have to pay attention to everything. There are connections all around the world on all of these issues. So while we started, and I was like, describing how Latin America and Middle East are different. You can't compare it. They do echo each other, right?
Yeah.
And one region that we didn't talk about, which I'm not going to claim expertise on, is Africa. And like in the last month, Vicky, just think about in the last month, we bombed Nigeria, ostensibly on behalf of protecting Christians. We bombed ISIS sites in Syria. We attacked and decapitated the leadership in Venezuela. And this is only 5 months or so after bombing nuclear sites in Iran, right? We've dropped more bombs in his first year than Biden did in all 4 years. So, if anything, and the president just put out a true social post bashing Raytheon, the defense contractor, for basically enriching itself. There's a and we have $1 trillion defense budget, and we're talking about purchasing or taking over Greenland. Maybe we'll partner with Mexico and counter narcotics so that Scheinbaum doesn't get deposed, right? Colombia is next. There's a lot of chaos going on right now. And I guess my big concern, my big fear is that the structures post World War II that enable us to have peace and stability and security are under deep duress and strain right
Right.
now. And I don't want to go back to a world of the 19th century great power
Hegemony.
competition, hegemony, nonstop war and conflict, everybody fighting each other, no structures, no balance. That makes me really nervous, and that to me is the theme of what this administration is doing, and I think it can be very dangerous, not just for the world, but also for the United States.
Yeah, I mean, Trump has always said, even in the first time round, he didn't see why he should be supporting, NATO, all the structures that were put in place. I would posit they've almost been dismantled already. I mean,
Yeah.
we're just clinging on, it feels.
We're clinging on, and we can't. If there's one thing, we're lacking humility right now in our policy making, and we need a healthy dose of it, because we can't physically control. The enemy always has a vote. That's the cliche, but we can't physically control every single action around the world. We just can't. That's why you build partnerships. That's why you build alliances. That's why you strengthen partner governments. That's why you look to civil society to be bought in. uh, uh, that's the long run game. That was, I know I'm sounding sentimental, but that was my Peace Corps experience in the mid
Right.
90s, built upon the vision of John F. Kennedy from the 60s, that you, as an Americans, that we will gain power and strength over time by investing in these kinds of structures and relations. And that's time tested and true. In Latin America, we really, over time, through Peace Corps, and in Africa, through USAID and Peace Corps and other institutions, built relations that were very deep, not just leader to leader alone. And that took a lot of time to get to that place. And I fear us just sort of tossing that aside, as it looks like we're doing.
Wow. Well, on that cautionary note, I'm going to say thank you, Joel, for your time and your insight.
No, you're very
Really,
kind.
really fascinating and valuable discussion. Thank you. Thank you,
Vicky, this
everyone,
was
for
a
listening.
real delight. Thanks, everyone.